Hi.
Good morning, folks.
How are we?
Doing good?
Cheers.
Cheers.
Look, I'm a sex bomb.
You chose it.
Katie's mugs.
Yeah, my mugs. I'm going to drink coffee and do stupid things faster with more energy. Except it's not coffee, is it?
No, I got Red Bush. What have you got?
Same, but I put milk in
Milky
mine.
Red Bush. We were just
apparently.
discussing this. I think that's weird. Do you think it's weird?
Yeah. You tell me if you think it's weird. I actually think there's nothing wrong with
It's
that.
going to be the biscuit debate again.
Well, you were wrong about the biscuits.
Apparently.
So... Well, you know, you're going to have to just try a Red Bush tea with milk in and then see what you think.
Maybe. All right. I'll hold you to that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk self-employment.
Yes, we are.
Something that we're both bravely doing.
Yes, or stupidly doing one or the
Yeah.
other.
You see this acne? This is self-employment acne.
Oh, self-employed. Yeah, really selling it, Luke. Yeah, you too could be like me.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, let's firstly talk about how wonderfully flexible it is, given that we're sat here at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday,
Yes.
and we're going to go for a Nando's after this.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheeky Nando's. And I know what you're going to order because I'm going to order the same thing,
Well,
right?
on your recommendation, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. Yeah.
So yes, flexibility is obviously the number one bonus.
It is. And a big part of, I think, why you do it, right? You want to be your own boss, be in charge of your own life.
Yeah. For me, it's a lifestyle business because, like yourself, I have children.
Yeah.
And in our family situation, we were just talking about knowing our privilege in this respect, weren't we?
Yes, yeah.
Because in both our family situations, we have full-time working husbands.
Yeah, very, very grateful and lucky.
Yeah, which gifts us the opportunity to explore our self-employment passions.
Yeah.
But also, you know, talk about full-time employment. Children are full-time employment in themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they don't pay you.
No. I mean, if I could work, I suppose, but then I'd have to pay someone else to do things with my children, and I may as well, from my point of view, have time with them and do those things and
each their own, right?
work around it. Yeah,
Works
that's
for
what
people.
works for me, and I'm assuming
for me
that's what
too,
works
yeah.
for you.
Yeah. So I started my self-employment journey when I adopted not just me and my husband adopted our eldest daughter. So I took the adoption leave for a year, and then in that time started my business.
Ah, amazing.
How did you come about self-employment?
So I was working for a marketing copywriting agency back in the day, and I just thought I want to do something else, and I know we're going to try to have a family, so how can I do that in a flexible way? And just thought, well, I'll go freelance. I actually had some coaching, some life coaching to give me the courage to do it, actually. And I took the leap and set up my own business, and it worked. I was like, I can do it on my own terms. This is exciting. Yeah.
That's interesting. So I want to talk about your family history, if you're happy to.
Yeah.
What was your family set up in terms of employment growing up?
Oh, I would say we had a quite traditional working class family, actually. So my dad ran a shop.
So self-employed.
He was, and then that didn't really work out. And then he was a shop manager for someone else.
Yeah.
That was the last part of his employment.
Yeah.
And my mum was a dinner lady and fitted around the kids. So I guess there's a pattern there. But there wasn't. There was a drive for self-employment. My dad really wanted to do that. But it didn't work out. I won't go into details, but it didn't really work out.
So I grew up in a self-employed household.
Oh, okay.
And so I was the different one in my family when I went into corporate world.
Oh, okay.
So both my parents are self-employed in the carpet industry, and my brother too. My brother then went into it as well. So I didn't know anything different than self-employment growing up. My mum did some really part-time stuff when I was really young, she worked in Circle K. Do you remember that?
Oh my God, we had one just there. We had a Circle
still?
K.
Yeah.
It was a Circle K back in the 90s.
It's only occurred to me in a few years ago that actually it's okay.
Oh my God, is that what it is?
Are you today?
They were called Circle K.
I know, but are you? You're today
啊
years old when you learned that?
Yes, you heard it here first. I had a. Yeah, okay. Thanks for that epiphany.
Yeah. So yeah, she did a couple of part-time things, but generally speaking, my parents have always been self-employed for most. And there was a point when the 2008 recession hit that my dad came to work with me, and my mum, actually both of them came to work with me when I worked in a hotel in HR. And but they still ran their self-employed businesses around that. So they kind of double worked. They both worked full-time. Well, my mum worked part-time at the hotel, my dad worked full-time.
Yeah.
And then they also ran their businesses outside of that. They just wanted to top up their income because of the recession.
Yeah, okay.
But that's my I guess my conditioning around employment. So when I went into the corporate world, I was very different to my family, but also I was more academic than my family growing up.
Right, okay.
And it's not like I was like an A-star student. I actually, GCSE-wise, I got 10 C's and 2 B's.
Yeah.
So very average in from a grading perspective, but in terms of how that was against my family, they weren't really academic at all and didn't really have anything to hold to their name in terms of qualifications perspective. Okay. And I went to university. I was the first person to do that.
Okay.
So kind of the self-employment, and it was a manual labour industry, like that kind of graft is all I knew growing up. So it doesn't surprise me that I didn't tolerate employment. 13 years I was employed, you know, in full-time jobs, 13 years. And it doesn't surprise me that from my conditioning perspective, I couldn't tolerate it.
Yeah, okay. So it was in your blood, really. You'd seen it, you'd lived it, and That's interesting, because I think the way I went into self-employment, and it's a big lesson I've learned, and anything I'd say to anybody thinking about it, I went into it with good intentions, but not quite the right reasons. I think for me, I feel when you become self-employed, you have to really want to do that job, that work. And so I sort of fell into it because it was convenient. I could do it. I thought I really enjoyed it. And bits of it I did, but I realised coming out of the structures of employment, it was actually, it was the camaraderie that was making the job as enjoyable. You know, the people I was with, you know, the clients, the fact, and then all the sort of the having to get clients in was really stressful. So suddenly I had nobody there. I was working alone in an office at home all day, not seeing anybody, having to get my own clients, being terrified if the phone rang, and also terrified if it didn't. So just constantly terrified, like anxiety was awful. So you know, I kind of went into it seeing other people do it, I suppose, like you. I'd seen other freelance copywriters doing the same thing. I hadn't really, and maybe I had to live it to know. I hadn't really understood what it was about that was working and why they did it. So now what I'm doing is a passion rather than a convenience. So
look, there's actually nothing convenient about being self-employed.
No.
There is flexibility, of course, but I think when you're employed, you don't always recognise the safety, the security, the sick pay, all of those things. I don't think that you just take that stuff for granted. Yeah. And I think in rose-tinted glasses, you think, I'd love to be self-employed. Imagine that flexibility. Yeah. Imagine that you go on holiday 4 weeks a year and don't get paid.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine that, like me, I've just had surgery, and I'm like, okay, well, this last 3 weeks has cost me a freaking fortune. So I think that there's a false sense of optimism. I certainly had a false sense of optimism when I went self-employed. And the realities are very tough. But I do remember growing up and my parents saying, almost drilling it into me, you're academic, Luke, go and get a proper job, have security.
Oh, really?
Yes,
did they?
Because
so
they didn't want me to be self-employed. And I remember when I first approached them about becoming self-employed, and they were supportive, but it came with like some warnings of, are you sure? And granted, I went into that, the idea that I had at the time was probably not as tangible or feasible as what I'm doing now. But yeah, I mean, my parents felt a bit scarred by their self-employment, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah, I guess because if it is your sole income, the responsibility is huge.
Responsibility is huge.
Massive responsibility. And psychologically, it feels different to having employment where you can have a bad day when you're employed and not really get an awful lot done, or somebody comes along and says, can you come and sit in on this meeting? And you sit in on this meeting and you think, oh, I've got nothing done that I wanted, but you still get paid, right?
Yeah,
you know?
And you know, if you don't do that stuff, I mean, the consequence doesn't necessarily result in being a consequence directly for you in your pocket. No, absolutely. And if you don't do it, I mean, there'll be some leniency, and then you might get called into a meeting. Well, how is it going, and what needs to be improved? And you might be put on a worst case a performance plan, and then to actually end up out of that work, you would have to do something incredibly horrible or you know unprofessional. When you're self-employed and you don't do,
you don't
get...
see them again. You get ghosted. That's it. You're like, oh, that client never got back to me. Oh, they obviously weren't happy, or they found someone else that did it in a different way, or a better way, or cheaper, or like. So they tax on your self-esteem.
It's a different pressure.
It is.
However, you wouldn't catch me in employment again.
No. Okay. Why'd you say? That's interesting. Why'd you say that? What makes you say that?
I would go nuts.
Elaborate, Luke.
I'm a control freak. I don't like being told what to do.
Okay.
No, I am. Yes, there are some issues of mine, of course, but I understand the convenience and the money aspect of being self-employed, of being employed. Sorry, but the flexibility and freedom that I have, regardless of money, and in fact, I do think if you go into self-employment, you should anticipate life without money for a while. And I think that you need to get comfortable with that and trust that, from my perspective, trust that the universe will always provide, because for me it always has. Yes, there have been times when I've been shitting myself that I can't pay the rent on the studio. Yeah. But something always happens and it always turns up, and I've never missed a bill. You know? And even through COVID and through broken bones and through the current cost of living crisis, I'm like, actually, I'm still sat here, I'm still all right. My kids have still got food and new clothes, and actually, if I can just adjust my life, for me, for what it does for my sanity, the lack of income is priceless in regards to the payoff of not having to go to a job every day and feel under somebody else's pressure. Okay. Also, I don't do hierarchy very well.
Okay, so for you it's this sort of, it's an equitable, because it's on your terms. Well, you're the top of the hierarchy, but it is on your terms. I see that. And so then having someone tell you how to live, I suppose, how you've got to be here for 8 hours or whatever.
I don't. For me, I used to work with a boss who was really good, and she always used to say, "Luke, work is a thing that you do, not a place that you are." And she was really flexible, and if you worked 6 hours one day and 10 the next, it didn't matter. There was no monitoring that or micromanaging that, and and if you came to work or worked home, it didn't matter. It was about productivity. What do you actually produce? Are you meeting the targets, the goals, whatever? And for me, I could actually work in an environment like that again. But I think that's not necessarily a cultural environment for a lot of businesses. I think it's a managerial thing. As you've got a manager that recognises the value in that, and I think the world's got better with flexibility since COVID. But if you get a manager that's good, I think employment can be wonderful. And I had a particular job where I had a wonderful manager, and then she left, and the replacement manager was very different. I literally went insane, quite literally. And then that's where I struggle with employment, because it's so I don't know what the word is, but it can change in an instant. And you have no control over it.
It's arbitrary what's going to happen depending on the personality of the person that's managing you.
And it can go from being amazing one day to being hell the next day. And that you have no control over that as an employee. And I don't also buy into, corporate bullshit. For lack of a better term. So that's another thing really. But I think ultimately I don't have any control over what could happen in the structure of a business and who I'm working with. Whereas as a self-employed person, I can choose who I work with. I can select if I want to work with certain clients or not, or I want certain people to use my space or not. And for me, that's really important, because then I can feel energetically aligned with what I do and who I work with under my terms.
That's it, isn't it? And that's beautiful, because that you're basically setting the culture for your workplace, as it were. And living according to your values, and that is something you can do when you're self-employed, because you set those values. Exactly. You know what they are. It's interesting because I am both self-employed and employed. So I work for a private GP practice. It's building up hopefully to a couple of days a week. But it's a really grown-up environment, because it's a small practice, and we've all come out of the NHS and we all know what that was like, and we don't want it to quite be like that. So it's very grown-up, and it's lovely.
Again, about the people you've got around you being in alignment.
Absolutely. And so where what I'm doing for my coaching business is very much just me, this is a team and we're all working towards something. And even though we're all doing our own thing, we're you know,
you're aligned.
Yeah, we're aligned, and it's nice. You get the chat and water cooler conversation and the, you know, just seeing other humans, and that scratches that itch for me. That's really nice.
I missed that in a sense because I was always that chatty person in the office that would irritate everybody or laugh too much. I constantly got in trouble for giggling too much in the workplace.
Can you imagine if we've worked together?
I know, it'd be brilliant.
We've never got anything done. I'd be like, where are Katie and Luke?
I was that person.
What are they doing?
Like, oh, here comes Luke. We're going to have a 20, half an hour conversation about something nonsensical, and we're going to giggle and not get any work done. That was my life.
Paid.
I know.
Wait.
Get paid for this.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Yeah.
But the difference is that as I'm actually, just to blow my own trumpet a little bit, I'm super efficient. So I can spend like 5 hours a day giggling, and then the other 3 hours I'll get all my work done. So I'd still be productive in that respect. But again, that's why I talked about flexibility in terms of management, because I had a manager that said, work's a thing you do, not a place that you are.
Yeah.
That for me works well.
Yeah.
I get everyone works differently. For some people, they need rigid, you know, kind of being a bit more rigid, or having set times or set productivity or measures or whatever. And that also works for some people, but that doesn't work for me.
No, but also I think what you've said about productivity, and we've talked about this before, just because you're expected to be somewhere for 7.5 hours a day or whatever, doesn't mean that you're going to be effective within that time.
Yeah,
you
spend
know,
5 hours giggling.
I will. Well, yeah, there's that. But there's the fact that, you know, maybe you're a bit tired.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a morning person. You work better in the morning. Maybe you come alive in the afternoon, and that's when you can get most of your work done. So actually, how much does it matter how long we spend in a building doing work? It's surely actually a bit more of a self-awareness exercise. Like, okay, well, what are my goals? What do I need to achieve by when?
Yeah.
How do I work best? Okay, well, I can afford to actually have a 2-hour lunch break. Wouldn't it be nice if people could do that within the confines of a business, and recognise that actually they'll be just as productive, if not more so.
More so, yeah. And I think this is where good management comes in, because I do think that if you get the right manager, you can do that stuff and you can operate that way.
Yeah.
I feel, as a grown-up person, that when I have to ask if I can have a lunch break or pop to the loo or have some holiday time off, or, you know, go and pick the kids up or something, if I have to ask for that stuff, I think, oh God, I feel like I'm back at school.
Yeah, the dynamic is wrong, isn't it?
For me, I'm like, where's the trust?
Yeah.
You know.
That's a really good question. Where is the trust? You know, what happens to erode it? Is it businesses and their culture that erodes it, or is it managers, personalities? I don't know.
I have a slight view. I think people take the piss. I think just generally in life, people can take the piss. Yeah. And I think when someone takes the piss, a policy comes into place to stop people doing that. And then a consequence comes into place. And then, you know, that just kind of escalates. And then before you know it, everybody then has to operate on the base level that the assumption is somebody will take the piss.
The lowest common denominator. Yeah. So everybody's affected by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can even see myself now doing that in my business.
Yeah.
Through recent conversations we've had. And I it's a self-reflection piece to me, and to look back and to think, actually, could I do things in a different way so that I don't then become an employer that's working at the base level of somebody taking the piss. Yeah, no, this is
very true. That's hard though, isn't it? Because you also have to protect your energy and your time.
Create boundaries.
Exactly, create boundaries, and have a policy that is just going to work for your business. That isn't, you know, I'll do this for this person and that for that person. It's a lot of your energy and your time.
And I guess that's something to consider if you're going to go self-employed, and whether it's about how you work with your clients, or if you do employ people or subcontract people, you know, how are you going to manage that? Because that's been a big... I was a HR manager before this, right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason I didn't want to be a HR manager anymore. One of those reasons is I didn't want to manage people anymore. However, in doing what I do and having a physical premises, I do effectively manage people still. And so it's been a real conflict of how do I run an authentic, kind, spiritual business, because that's what I run, but also run a business.
Yeah,
with boundaries and rules. And that's a real juxtaposition, and I can't, you know, I can put my hands up and say I haven't mastered that.
I think because it seems that they conflict really.
Yeah.
The kind of the business money making.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what if you? But then if you even if you take the money out of it, it's still just how do I get along with a group of people so it's fair and equitable?
Yeah.
Isn't it? Without the money being the
I
issue.
mean, you can take the money out of it because there ain't any at the moment. Well, that's not true. I don't know how you found this, and you're kind of moving into self-employment in a different format now. But over the years, I've done almost 6 years self-employed now, and it has been like this.
Yeah.
You know, there are some months where I'm like, oh my God, I've done amazing. And if it carries on like this, I can employ someone properly and, you know, and I can expand and I can grow. And then there are other months and I'm like, I'm going to have to root through my savings to cover the rent. And of course, we've been through like a pandemic and I've had broken bones and everything else.
Yes.
And the cost of living crisis and everything else. But still, I always have to come back to doing what I love.
That's it.
I'm fulfilling a mission, which is to, at the moment, create a space for people who need it. You know, from a growth, a healing, a self-awareness, a spiritual, self-care environment, a wellbeing centre. So I'm fulfilling my mission, and I'm paying bills and feeding my children and having nice things.
Yeah.
And so, yes, maybe my bank account isn't as healthy as it was when I had employment.
Yeah.
But I'm still sat here at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday having a coffee with a friend, and I wouldn't trade any of that back in just to have a regular income.
This is true. Because, I mean, I guess it comes down to as well, what do you want? Like, what do you want out of life? It's a big question. What do you want the money for? And I think it's interesting. I was talking to some of the delegates on my course. I did a course yesterday about this and about capitalism and how we always chase. We seem to be encouraged to think we don't have enough, actually. And actually, I think the mindset that you sort of have to be comfortable with if you move into self-employment is that you will have enough. If you get really successful, you might have quite a lot.
Yeah, you might have more.
But you have to let go of the reliability of a certain level of income and be comfortable with having the bases covered.
Yeah. And you know, also, I've heard this before, but they say it takes 5 years to really embed a business.
Yeah, I can believe it.
And I think a lot of people naively go into it and think, I just make money straight away and there's loads of interest in what I do, you know, and I just think the reality is you're going to struggle a lot, and it's going to be, you know, highs and lows. But again, come back to what you said, why are you doing it? What's the purpose? What's really important to you?
Yeah. Exactly. What do you want out of it? But also, that's where the passion for what you're doing comes in. Because when you've got that passion, when you really believe, I want to do something and it's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
In those times where no one's buying, or you thought you'd got a new client or whatever and it didn't work out, you come back to, no, it's okay. Obviously that wasn't meant to happen for whatever reason. I'll just keep going.
Tenacity.
Yeah, it does. I think the passion is what leads to that. If you don't have the passion, and I didn't really for writing. I ended up in a niche with technology copywriting. It didn't set me on fire, and you know, for some people it really does, and they loved it. It didn't for me. So when you know it didn't work out with a client or something, or it didn't get a proposal I put in, I'd really feel it like
take everything personally when you're self-employed. When you're employed, there's this kind of healthy barrier where actually it's not my business. So at the end of the day, I can still go home and get paid. Yeah. And I really don't need to be that emotionally invested.
Yes.
As a self-employed person, every little thing will break you. I remember getting a 1-star review. Broke me for weeks. And it was just some woman that I don't feel had a point.
She was just wrong.
Just unkind in my view. But it broke me for weeks. And I think that's the difference between being employed and being self-employed, is you put your heart, your soul, your finances, your passion.
Yeah, you do.
You put every ounce of what you have into it.
Yeah.
And any little thing that is conflicting will hurt you more than it does in employment, where you can go, well, it's not my business and I'm going to get paid anyway.
Yeah, exactly. You just walk away.
Yeah, so there's a total, and in worst case scenario, you just quit and get another job.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you're self-employed, you don't. It's consuming. It's your life.
It's like a child,
Yeah,
right? You've
yeah.
birthed this thing.
Yeah,
Oh, look,
absolutely.
I created this, I birthed a baby and now I'm offering it to the world, and the world's going, meh,
Yeah.
don't like that. It's
Yeah.
like somebody
Your child's
telling
ugly.
you, yes, exactly. You wouldn't do it, but you know, it's like somebody telling you your child is ugly, but my child's beautiful. I created it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you put everything into it. So I think there's a huge element of accountability and responsibility that comes with being self-employed that you don't necessarily get when you're employed.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the beautiful sort of oxymoron of it, isn't it? That's what keeps you going and what destroys you in equal measure. Like, I'm doing it because I love it so much, and I love it so much, and it's destroying me.
Yeah.
But no, it's you have to have that passion, because that is what will keep you going.
I also think, from a financial perspective, if you're risk averse, you're going to want to do it in a different way. I'm an all in or all out person. And I'm just like, bugger it, the universe will look after me, go. Let's do it. Just jump in feet first. Yeah. But you're possibly a little more risk averse to me because you've maintained a employment alongside it.
Yeah, not always, but I am. Yeah. I am sort of hedging my bets a little bit, I suppose. I'm trying to be practical. For me,
more sensible than me.
But I think that's just how it's worked out, because the employed business is health coaching, and my new business is more life coaching. So I've sort of it just worked out that way, I think, to be honest. I wouldn't say it's necessarily because I'm risk averse, but it does mean I can have a different attitude about my business and can just sort of have a bit more breathing space around it. What I would say, though, about risk is a really interesting one, and I think we tend to think that employment is much less risky. What I have seen repeatedly is that's not true.
You just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, do you?
Absolutely. We put faith that, oh, well, I'll wake up tomorrow and go to work and get paid. Wow, how many times has that actually not been the case? Yeah. You go to work and find out there's massive redundancies, or or you get sick or something, you know, or someone else gets sick and they go, or
you
somebody
end up
gets
with double the
fired.
workload.
Yeah, you know, we have this illusion of
security,
of safety. Yeah, and I think when you actually, for me, part of the reason that I can be self-employed is because I feel I've seen it. It's like seeing the Matrix, you know, like it's not actually as secure as you might think. Yeah. So, and actually I'm in charge here. So whilst it is a more obvious risk, I have more control over whether it works or not, is what I would say. What do you think?
I think that's really valid. And having been a HR manager, I also know how flaky the employment industry can be, because I've had to actively unemploy people. You know,
that's one way of putting it. Yeah.
And I've managed redundancies, and I've managed disciplinaries and dismissals and all kinds of stuff. And then you're right, I've cut hours, and then I can go, oh, it's just the policy, it's just what the business has decided. It's not me. It's not personal. Yeah. So that's another bugbear of mine, is the impersonability of, or the inhumanity of human resources, but that can be another conversation. Well,
human resources just sounds like human remains.
Human remains, yeah. That's what a health and safety guy used to work with used to call us.
Did I ever tell you years ago I saw that the Body Shop was hiring a human resources manager? I'm like, the Body Shop wants human resources? That just sounds really wrong.
What was that point?
Sorry, I interrupted you to make a joke.
I liked it. It was good, but I don't remember what we were talking about.
Human resources and hiring and firing people.
The inflexibility of employment. Yeah. Lack of security.
Yeah.
It's fickle. And if you die, they're going to put an advert out and replace you tomorrow. Oh,
wow. That is a big one. I've seen that doing the rounds, that sort of quote.
It's true.
Have no fear that that's what's going to happen. You die, they're going to recruit a replacement.
Interesting. So this is interesting for me. I obviously worked in HR, and I was in a hotel. My dad was working in that hotel. My dad died in employment, and then we advertised his job.
Gosh.
And I get it. I understand that that's the process that needs to happen. The job needs to be filled. That's really hard to deal with. when you're the person that has to make that kind of cutthroat action and also grieving at the same time.
My goodness, that's a lot.
So you know, that meme or that thing that goes
yeah.
round, I'm like, actually that proper hits home.
That really does. That happened to you.
It literally happened.
Wow.
You know?
Gosh. Was that part of an awakening for you?
Oh, big turning point.
Yeah.
I think the diagnosis was probably the big turning point. You know, and everything's so fickle. And like you say, when you're self-employed, you have control of that.
You do. You have as much as you possibly ever could.
Yes.
You know.
And granted, you might have to graft a bit more to get the clients or to, you know, bring money through the door. It's still on your shoulders, and some people will thrive on that responsibility, and some people won't, and that's okay. I think that, you know, we're not sat here telling people that you all need to quit your jobs and go self-employed by any means.
No.
But if it's something that you think is in your wheelhouse and that you are curious about, like if you can handle that responsibility on your shoulders, then I would say go for it. Don't sit back and think, I wish I did it. You know, don't get to retirement and go, I wish I did that.
Yes. Absolutely. I think for me, I had coaching before I did it, and what the coaching did was force me to look at my assumptions, funny enough, we were talking about it earlier, that I was making about becoming self-employed that was stopping me from actually doing it. So the coaching got me to look at, well, things like, we can't afford for me to go self-employed, or it's too much of a risk for me to go self-employed, or what if I don't get any clients? And I was forced to really look at the things that were in the way and decide, are they true? And if they are, well, what can I do about them? Because you have to really look at it honestly in order to be able to decide. And so that I just would say is what helped me.
It takes a realignment of your. We kind of touched on this earlier, but you're conditioned to think that you need everything or to strive for more. But you're right. If you can actually look at your physicality, like in real terms, what do I need to pay the bills? What do I need to have a few nice things?
Yeah.
Do I really need 3 holidays a year? Do I really need the most expensive car? Do I really need to, you know, buy all this stuff for my children that they don't necessarily need?
Exactly.
And when you start to scale back, you can survive on less than you realise and be happier, more flexible, less stressed, more free.
Which, let's be honest, all of those things you've listed will extend your life, potentially, or at least improve the quality of it, which is the whole reason we're here. Like, you know, do you want to be trapped in a job you hate, thinking you can't get out?
Just working to retirement.
Hating it, and actually potentially affecting your health, or going out and just looking at what it could look like, imagining possibility, and then if you did go down that route, you can try it at least, you know. There's no harm in trying.
You might not make retirement. My dad didn't make retirement, and he worked 90-hour weeks.
Well,
for what? To literally put himself into an early grave. And then for me, I'm like, why? I'm not going to make that same mistake. I want to be here for my grandchildren.
Well, yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
So
we have to readjust our expectations of what life should be like.
What do we really want from life? What do we really want? And what is most important to us? And if it's fancy cars and holidays, crack on. Yeah. And if it's to live to a decent age, to be healthy, to be less stressed, to be more free, to have time to enjoy life, then crack on in that direction.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, choose your priority and go for it.
Yeah, it's a very positive message.
You're welcome.
I like it. Choose your priority and go for it.
Yeah,
in an American accent.
What did I post? I posted something last night on Facebook. It came up on your phone actually when you turned it on. I can't even remember what it is now, and I literally posted it like 12 hours ago.
It was a quote. I can see the squarely writing.
Yeah, I know. That thing that you want, just go and do it.
Just something go and do it. Yeah.
If that thing that you want is self-employment and you're curious about it, give it a go. Look
into it at least. Yeah. Look into it with curiosity. Just looking is not going to harm anyone, is it? Just looking and thinking about it.
And if you're more risk averse, make a plan.
Yeah.
You know, get a spreadsheet, look at your numbers, look at your long-term goal, you know, set goals, make set an ambition. So for me, it took me 2 years just to qualify as a yoga teacher. So I did have a plan. Mine was like, okay, we've got 2 years for me to get qualified as a yoga teacher. within that time to get approved to adopt, to have children, to start my yoga studio. So I didn't just do that on a whim after we adopted our daughter. I did it with a plan.
Yeah.
And actually it aligned timing wise, like absolutely spot on perfectly.
Yeah.
And so I do think if you've got a really healthy plan that you're confident and passionate about, the universe will deliver it.
Yeah. But just being honest and transparent about what you want and trying to make it happen. And, you know, could you do a bit of the self-employed thing alongside another job? People do. And
there are a lot of people that aren't in the position that we're in, that have husbands that work. You know, maybe you're fending for yourself, maybe you're looking after children or other responsibilities, or your finances are too stretched to be able to step out of work. What can you don't use it as a barrier, but actually say, what can I do? And is that one Saturday a month I'm going to try and get 1 or 2 clients to do this thing, and then I build it up slowly until I have the confidence or the financial means to do it a bit more. Maybe, you know, if I can rent a space for £10 an hour, it's not much of a loss if I lose it, rather than going and getting a full commercial premises at £1,000 a month. You know what I mean? What's your comfort level, and just bring it to the edge of that and teeter on that edge and play with that. You know, as I say, I'm an all in or all out person, so I'm just like, oh, F it, I'm gonna just take on a massive commercial space and make it work.
But when you built up to that, though, let's be honest, that's not where you started, is it?
As a yoga teacher?
As a yoga teacher.
Yeah, that's where I started.
But with a massive space. It was
it was above the old post office.
Oh, okay. Was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I went in that, I shared with somebody. Yeah. So it was half risk, I guess, because I shared with someone, and then she went out of business. And then I moved to the one by the fire station, which I then took on solely, and then subletted it to other people to help cover my rent. Then I had the accident, took the little space just to get myself literally back on my feet, and then within that was invited to move upstairs. So, but you know, I never did I'm going to go and teach in gyms just so that somebody else is paying me, or I'm going to rent a church hall. I didn't do any of that. Yeah. I did jump in.
You wanted your
space.
I
was like, I want a studio and I'm going to have one.
So that was your non-negotiable then. So you figured out what you,
And how did I do it financially? We remortgaged our house and got the money out and paid a year's worth of rent up front. Yeah. So that I could build a business. Yeah. That was our decision. Yeah. So there are ways and means. It depends on your level of risk.
Exactly. And yeah, exactly. And having honest conversations with yourself and with your loved ones, and how you're actually gonna practically make this work. Yeah.
And I nearly went back to employment last year. Do you remember?
No, I remember you saying.
I nearly got a job at the cinema. I was like, I don't want to work in HR again. I'll just go and get a job that I don't have to think about. And I was like, I love movies and popcorn.
So I won't be in the movies eating the popcorn. I'll just work nearby.
Nearby.
Yeah. But do you know what? And there would be nothing wrong with that as well, I have to say. There is no right way to do any of this. No. There's whatever works. Yeah. You know, a book I talk about a lot is that Jeff Brown one, Soul Shaping. And in that, he talks about, he was a lawyer, trained as a lawyer, felt a real pull to it was really easy, but knew there was something else he wanted to do. And the whole book is about how he went towards that other thing and then got scared and got employed again. And then he went towards it and got scared and got employed. So, you know, it's just human nature. You know, there is no right way. There's whatever works for you at that point in your life. And obviously when he finally made the decision to go self-employed doing what he's doing now, it was right, according to his own criteria.
I talk a lot about life isn't a constant upwards trajectory. You're not just always going up the hill and get to the peak, right? No. You often slide back. Right, and that's a great example from Jeff Brown, is that, you know, tried to go self-employed and got scared again.
Yeah, right? I loved that he talked about that, because nobody talks about that. Everyone goes, I went out and I changed my life, and mic drop. You know, it's not like that.
And that's what you see on social media most of the time. People saying, look, I've done it, you can do it. Here's, you know, this is how I made my last 100,000 or whatever. Yes. And I'm like, that's just making things unattainable, I think. Yeah. I'm like, the reality is, it's a dance.
That's a very good way of putting it. It's a dance. Yeah. It's your dance according to, and you know, for you that studio was your all in, and that's how you did it. That's what worked for you. And
how many hiccups and bumps have I had? And then I nearly took a job at the cinema. but I didn't. I'm still here.
The cinema's still there, Luke.
The cinema's still there.
It will always accept you in.
Yeah, but, you know, I would get really large on nachos.
Oh, and they'd be horrible because they'd have that cheesy plastic
I love
sauce.
The cheese. That's the
but
best
it's plastic
part.
sauce.
Oh, it's delicious.
Oh, it's grim.
I know, I get it.
You've gone down in my estimation.
Stars.
You choose bad food.
We just have opposite views on food, except hopefully today when we go to Nando's, and we might agree on our menu choices.
Definitely, we'll be doing that.
On that note, self-employment.
Yeah, I hope you found that, well, insightful. Tell us what you think. We always love to hear what you think.
Do you have self-employment stories, and do you want to come and talk to us, with us, about your self-employment journey? So I think last episode we were talking to Ray. She was asking lots of questions.
Yeah.
And so we're going to get Ray on, and we're going to have a good chat with her.
Oh, yes, please. That'd be awesome.
So, you know, if you want to join us, we can have a guest speaker. Why not?
Coffee with Katie and Luke, and mystery guest.
Yes. Great. Cheers to our
Cheers
empty cups.
to an empty sex bomb mug. He chose it.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.